Most buyers think that their escrow deposit when they're buying a house is automatically refundable. That's not the case. Listen up, and it can save you tens of thousands of dollars. So if you remember the last video blog I did, I said one of the great ways of showing the seller that you are a good buyer and a serious buyer is to put a very large amount of deposit down on the escrow. Now that's typically 1% in Florida, but if you want to show that you're really serious, you could put 2 or even 3%. Now that sounds great. That may get you under contract. However, it's so important that you stay on top of those contingencies. And if you don't, your escrow is going to be at jeopardy and you could possibly lose that, which you never want to do. So let's talk about the contingencies that you need to stay on top of. Number one is typically the inspection contingency. So in Florida, I would say about 99% of contracts are what's called an as-is contract. With an as-is contract, it means as a seller, you don't have any repair limits. However, as a buyer, you have the right to inspect the property and you can back out for any reason during that inspection process. The contract typically has 15 days. Good listing agents try to get that down to 7 days. So during that period of time, you can back out for any reason. You don't even have to do the inspection report. You might just change your mind when you wake up in the morning, or maybe you found another property. So you can get out for any reason. And when you get out during that period of time, you're able to get that escrow money back. Now, if you go past that and you see another house and you don't want to buy it, then that escrow is going to be at jeopardy. Okay. The other piece is the financial contingency. So if you're a cash buyer, you're not going to have a financial contingency, which is great. And that's why buyers with cash are usually better offers than homes that have to be financed. However, since most buyers have to get a lender to get the money, there's going to be what's called a financial contingency. The financial contingency is typically 30 days. However, that is negotiable. I've seen it all the way up to 15 days. Maybe the buyer already had a contract with another property and maybe it fell out of contract, but they're so much further along in the financing that they can make that shorter. Now, here's the thing to keep in mind is that you have 30 days to get what's called a commitment letter from the lender stating that they're going to provide you the money for the loan. If you don't get that during that financial contingency, you can back out of the contract and you can get that escrow money back. However, if you go past that, your escrow is in jeopardy, and you'll be surprised at how many times I see that happening. Now, the other contingency is the appraisal contingency. Now, typically the appraisal takes place within the financial contingency. But however, I've seen times where they have the typical appraisal contingency, which states it has to be appraised at least 10 days prior to closing. And maybe they put a really short financial contingency. So the appraisal contingency is falling after the financial contingency. Well, if you go past the appraisal date that's in that contingency and it doesn't appraise, you're going to lose a lot of leverage because then the seller understands that and they can use that to negotiate on getting the price that they want if you have to renegotiate if it doesn't appraise. So that's something to be aware of. Lastly, sales contingencies. So a sales contingency is when you put a contingency and there's a buyer that states that if your house doesn't sell by this date, that you're able to back out and you can get the full escrow back. Now, typically in today's market, you don't see a lot of those unless your house is already under contract and you're already through inspections and maybe even through the appraisal process. But if you do, you need to stay on top of that because if you go just one day past that, you could lose your escrow. So here's the good news with all this here is that if you're working with the right team, they're going to help you provide the best offer with a high escrow to be able to win and get the contract. However, they're also going to allow you to stay on top of these timelines because if you get close to a timeline, you're going to need to either extend it or you're going to need to back out of the contract, and that's going to protect your escrow. Unfortunately, a lot of agents don't stay on top of it, especially if they're part-time agents, and then that puts your escrow in jeopardy, and that's not what you're wanting to do. So if there's anything we can do to help you find a house, purchase a house, go under contract, and protect your escrow during their time, the entire thing, please let us know. We'd be glad to help you out. Our contact information is below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube page. And we hope that you are now real estate smart.